What's up? Welcome to another episode of Marvel's Schmarvel. This is the special side project of the Movie Schmovie podcast, our weekly show breakdown that we do here on YouTube exclusively for the Marvel Disney Plus series, Marvel theatrical releases, really anything Marvel. My name is Steve, and I'm here as always with
Ron.
There you go.
And I'm John Walker, and I just want you guys to know, last time you saw me, I seemed like I was in a bad way, but I'm doing great today, and just trust me.
You just brought it around, and we're good now.
You might say between scenes, I had like a heart-to-heart with myself, and now I'm in a totally different place.
Right.
It's good to hear, man.
Thank you for clarifying that.
I thought it'd be a good last episode twist for this podcast.
Yeah. I'm glad you're doing well, man. That's really good to hear. Honestly.
Will you give me like a nod, like just a quick little like, I guess you're okay kind of nod as we pass each other? Was that what we'll get? Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. I'm in the clear.
Yeah.
All is forgiven for John Walker's.
So it seems.
It's been a crazy couple days and or weeks in the news of Marvel, right? Like, why don't we talk about some news up top, and then we can get into the main course.
Yes.
Like,
Shang-Chi trailer. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
I loved it.
I'm really excited. I don't know any other. It just looks like it has a lot of mythology that we just haven't been introduced to before. I'm not super familiar with Shang-Chi.
I'm not either.
On my list of comics. It was, and just for context, I feel like there were no active trades of Shang-Chi when I was, the times that I've kind of come back into comics. Yeah. I don't remember seeing Shang-Chi. I mean, like going and being like, hey, what's the new run of comics this week? Nobody said, hey, Shang-Chi, we got to do that. It just wasn't.
Well, I think
it's not.
It's another example of what Marvel does, Ronald, which is like we're comics guys, and people that like Steve has frequently said on this show when we've discussed Marvel stuff, oh, I don't know about the comics, so I might not know as well as you guys. And I think we've said to Steve every time, actually knowing the comics doesn't help that much because they might
do their own thing.
They might take a kind of
so much.
a C-list or B-list character and choose them to be like a vessel for something they can really do over a character that has all this tortured mythology. And because of the way that when MCU got started, they didn't have X-Men, they didn't have Fantastic Four, they didn't really have Spider-Man. So it's like, who were they going to go with? So they have been taking these kind of minor characters and blowing them up sometimes. So I think this is a great example of one that feels like, I mean, I know that's out there. I think since the 90s, he's been a character with a certain amount of story, but maybe he's more recent than that. But I don't know really anything about him except that I expect it to tie into some mythology that doubles back on that. The Mandarin character in Iron Man 3 was a fake. Like Ben Kingsley was playing an actor playing a character. Spoilers for Iron Man 3, everybody. And a lot of people thought that was a clever way to do the Mandarin. A lot of people don't like that movie primarily because of that bait and switch
part. Yeah.
But I think that like this is going to maybe tie into some real mythology that is the background of that. So I think that's the closest this movie comes to anything that's already been established in the MCU, is that it might tie into Mandarin mythology, and whatever it was that Ben Kingsley's character was pretending to be might be the real deal in this. I don't know if you saw that one shot they did. This was a long time ago, but there was a one shot that showed Ben Kingsley's actor character in prison reacting to the fact that there does seem to be a real Mandarin. So again, I think that might be the only thing, if even in this movie. But I feel like that other than that, I was getting like Wakanda vibes of just seeing like a whole new set of characters and a whole new world. They didn't even show us the dragons that we know are in this because there have been Lego sets promoted that have dragons in them. So it's like we're back in that zone of not knowing anything about a property that Marvel's doing. I think that's kind of fun.
I think it's like another example of just like a good choice of a property to really like insert into the MCU at the right time, where like we've kind of come to the end of like the stories and the settings that we're so familiar with, with the movies and now even the TV shows with characters that we've met before. So to see a new character, an entirely new character introduced into the, MCU and just like, an event film is exciting. And like what you said, John, like just the way the world looks, the mythology, the idea of just like not really knowing anything about what this movie is going to be about or how it ties into the MCU or, even how it ties into these shows, the show that we talk about today, it seems like there's going to be a tie-in somehow to this show or at least to some part of it. It just is a really cool time for Marvel. It's a little scary in ways because it's like, how are these movies going to do? How is Shang-Chi? How is Eternals? Like everybody's like, I can't wait to see a trailer for the Eternals. It's just like, it's just uncharted territory, which sounds ridiculous because it's just like you got to trust the Marvel thing because it seems like they just know what the hell they're doing. But yeah, the trailer was really cool. Some really amazing fight sequences, which we talked about.
The double punch, double kick in the
Yeah.
train. Oh Jesus.
Yeah,
That
so
was
like we were
cool.
talking about this on this, you know, for this show that we're talking about on the pod now, like the hand-to-hand combat, the fighting, you know, that stuff is like really enjoyable to watch when it's done really well, and it's especially so in the MCU. So, you know, this movie looks like it's going to have a nice mix of that stuff, you know, blended with, you know, some of the mystical, you know, elements of what this movie seems to be bringing with it. So I'm excited, you know, and I think what's the lead's name? Is it Sam? He's on Kim's Convenience. Do you know who plays Shang-Chi?
I don't want to mispronounce his name, but is it like
Sam Liu or something? Or?
Yeah, I think it's Liu.
And just how excited he is about being Shang-Chi.
Yeah.
I follow him on Twitter, and like he is just like, I love just everything he has to say about, you know, being involved with this project. Like he like, you know, is like tweeting things about like how like 7 years ago he like tweeted at Marvel.
It's Simu Liu.
Simu Liu.
It's Simu. I'm very sorry. We're not making a joke about this. We're trying to pronounce it. We don't know how to pronounce it. I'm sure we'll be hearing his name around soon, but it's spelled like Simu Liu.
Okay. Yeah. So him, my point just being like, you know, following the lead of this movie, who is just like beyond excited to be this character, to be in the MCU. Like the fact that he like retweets like him trolling Marvel over the last 7 years to be this character. And he is this guy. Like, it's just, it's exciting that they released it on his birthday. Like the trailer came out on his birthday. It's just, it's a very positive vibe about it. And he's like pumped about being this character, which just makes me even more excited to watch it.
Yeah, I do think that carries over. I do think that carries over a lot, the excitement. And again, it reminds me of the excitement you felt from some of these other movies where the cast clearly is like all about the chance they've had to kind of add to this lore. And, you know, what the story looks like, it might be a kind of conventional hero's journey, kind of heeding the call sort of origin, but it still is, it feels and looks different. And again, I think it's been a while since we've had a straight up origin story in an MCU movie, I think. So in that sense, it's that's kind of fun too, to think that we might just get, like, again, the newness of it, I think, is what I keep coming back to, outside from the fact that it does look like it fits the Marvel style. But I do believe them when they say they're working out ways to make the action a little bit more immediate, because just in the trailer, it feels like people are fighting people, right? You know, not just pixels zipping around. So
yeah. And representation matters, obviously. China, I'm looking on a website. It says that China accounts for like $3 million in box office revenue, and it's only April. So you know,
3 million? You mean
$3 million?
$3 billion.
Yeah.
$3 billion. Sorry.
Okay, good.
I'm like,
good.
I'm looking at the conversion. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I knew this was coming anyway. You know, I'm a big NBA fan. Representation from Asia has been a very big thing in the NBA for the past 10 years. They were very early on it, very early on the, like, bringing people over who are super talented to represent Asian countries that are just doing that were doing pretty incredibly, and hopefully it'll continue. So I mean, while I do think it's a really cool thing, the business of it is very obvious that they're trying to reach into this sector and make a ton of money.
Oh yeah,
because representation matters, but then also Asia matters. And I don't, we got to start
representation, and the S is a dollar sign. You know, I mean, it's like, but I mean, it works for the MCU. It works for the MCU. I mean, and I like that, but I do, it's like, it's hard not to be cynical about it on a certain level. But I kind of jump right past the cynicism to thinking like, no, it seems like, again, I'm only imagining this, but if I was an Asian American kid, I think it was pretty cool that this movie looks good.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like like they're just fainting at something. It's like, even if it's too long in coming, it feels like, man, this is legit, and they're diving in. Again, very similar to the way people felt about Black Panther. It's like, well, this was too late, but they didn't mess around, you know, when they did it. And in terms of getting a creative team, like, this one looks like the same. They really seem like they're trying to cover their bases in terms of what representation means in front of and behind the camera. So
it looks like we're excited, man.
I mean, at this point, this is a Marvel podcast. Oh, Steve, at the beginning, it sounded like you said, welcome to Marvel's Schmarvel. And I just want to say, maybe the name of the show should be Marvel's Marvel Schmarvel, since they do that Marvel's thing. But and maybe Marvel's movie Schmovie. We should just go ahead and add that to our other show. But yeah, so I mean, we're a little bit in the bag for this stuff. We wouldn't be doing this show if we didn't think it looked good. But I also think if this trailer looked like shit on ice, we would be saying so. And I felt myself get like emotionally into it while watching it, and it was like all that cynicism kind of melted away, and I started going like, when that moment when she says "Who are you?" and the music, and he's doing that pose, and then the name comes up. I mean, come on, that was just like that was a good trailer beat, if not a great moment in the movie, and it looks like it might be a cool moment in the movie too. So,
absolutely.
Shang-Chi. The other thing was they've made some announcements. I guess we'll save one of the big announcements for sort of after we talk about this show, since it's kind of led into by this show. So we'll save that big movie announcement. But the other thing is the casting announcements for some of these MCU shows on Disney Plus. Yeah, let's talk about some of these amazing. Well, one amazing person and one person I'm pretty okay with. It's been added to the MCU.
Pretty okay with, but it's probably a good decision for the MCU to include her.
Yes, you're probably right. You're probably right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You were going to say Olivia
Colman has been cast in Secret Invasion, and so has Emilia Clarke. Last we saw Emilia Clarke, she was quite good, I thought, in Solo. So I have nothing against her. It's just that weird taste of Game of Thrones that I don't know if everybody's quite gotten out of their mouth.
I'm pretty sure they probably cast her after seeing Last Christmas, if anything.
If anything, yeah.
Or the Terminator movie.
That's what she's known for, right? Yeah.
She's actually really sweet, and like I kind of like that movie a lot, to be honest with you. The Last Christmas. Did you guys see that?
No. I really actually want to see that movie.
And like Henry
Terminator.
No, Henry Golding and her in Last Christmas. Like it's they're pretty sweet in that movie.
No, honestly, I saw the trailer for that and thought she was charming. I actually do like her. I think I'm making more of a joke about just the Game of Thrones of this situation, which is a show that everyone loved and couldn't shut up about for like 6 or 7 years, and then like everyone just kind of quietly backed away when it was over. But no, that's great casting. Olivia Colman especially is like, wow, she's been so good in everything she's done. How could she not be playing some kind of shape-shifting person, or so? I don't know what they're going to get her to do, but I have a feeling that they're not going to waste her. But they have had pretty exciting casting before, where when you see the thing, the person doesn't really register. So but anyway, Secret Invasion as a project, I'm really excited about this. It feels like it should be a movie, but the fact that they're doing it as a show makes me wonder if it's, how much of the MCU it's going to take in, because it's all about Skrulls having been here for a long time, and anybody could be a Skrull, and that feels like a real opportunity to do some good mindfuckery. I don't know. What do you guys think of that property?
I like the comic. I think what I'm really afraid of that that Marvel still hasn't proven is that people from the movies can come into the shows. They still haven't. I still don't feel that weight. I still don't feel like these are I think the stories are interwoven. I just don't think the big, like, would I ever see Iron Man in an episode of a Disney Plus show? I'm just saying, like,
I think you will eventually.
I hope so. I think they should have started up top with. I'm not saying somebody being in a whole story arc of a season. I just right now it doesn't feel like these two worlds
So War Machine wasn't enough?
I would say everything we've seen in these two Disney Plus shows are movie characters, though. Like,
I think they're about the Avengers.
I kind of know what you mean, but I mean, everybody that's been in one of these shows, Paul Bettany, Elizabeth Olsen, they've all been movie characters. So I think they've already done that. I think what I would say that might be a different form of what you're saying, but maybe we agree, is that I don't think they've quite yet closed that loop that, like, this is essential storytelling that feeds into the next thing. And it's just, it's like, I think they've come close to the same caliber. There are moments on both of these shows that felt like they were approaching the production value of the movies, but they have yet to really feel like that. So my opinion is we won't know until we see this next wave of these
movies,
these things supposedly lead into, before we can then go back and say, well, then it's okay that these shows feel a little bit like both seasons of these shows have ended in a way that feels like, as good as this was, as entertained by this as I was, I can see how this was designed both to serve those other things, and also, and this might be to your point, Ronald, it's not quite as much as the Netflix shows, but it does feel like these are in little pockets of story that you could arguably see the next episode of whatever the story is and not need to have seen this story play out over 6 hours or whatever it was in both cases. I enjoyed the ride, but I don't think they've quite closed the deal of saying these shows are as important and as good as our movies. That's the I don't think they've met that bar. As far as it being like seeing the movie characters in the television show, I feel like they've crossed that. I think that part is covered. The fact that they still don't feel like the movies is the odd part to me.
I think the players involved, if they tell you that it's a show starring people from the movies, okay. I mean, people that are not set to star in the show, I always want to see some surprises. That's all. I'm just saying, like, I know that Paul Bettany and why can't I remember
Elizabeth Olsen.
Elizabeth Olsen will be in that show because they told us they're going to be in that show.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. It's like, is anybody outside of the people that they've said, oh, Hawkeye's going to be in? Yeah, he's in the movie, but is somebody else from the movie?
Yeah. I think you're right. I think it's something that only will happen with time. I think like I think like, you know, the next wave of these shows, like once you get past Loki, I feel like the Hawkeye, the Secret Invasion, like whatever, you know, the Moon Knight, like whatever else they're doing. I think that once they get into that level of it, I think they'll be past this first wave, which seemed to really be coasting out of the phase 3 stuff still. You know, and like kind of opening up characters from there. And I mean, the other characters will be the same characters we've seen before, some brand new, some not. But I think that's probably when you'll see a little more of a crossover, I hope. And I mean, I don't know if the shows will ever truly feel like the movies. And I think that may be intentional, but I think the storytelling should kind of at least be on par in some way with it, because I mean that's really what needs to be consistent.
Well, that's more what I'm talking about. I'm not saying that because I think the three of us are saying very much a similar thing, which is that these shows are still sort of untested in our heads in terms of how much they're in terms of how essential they are, and in terms of like, do they really affect the big thing as much? I think we would be annoyed if it was just guest star every week, though. But I think that feeling like it's part of this interconnected world, we just don't know yet. It's almost like they've decided these are characters that we can deal with in a TV way because we're not going to give them full movies, you know. But then the end of this season of Falcon and Winter Soldier puts us in a different place in a way. So I don't know. But no,
in time.
Right. It'll eventually, but Secret Invasion does seem like that might be the one that it's going to feel incomplete if it doesn't have what you're saying, Ronald, if it doesn't have the biggest characters available popping in, because that sounds like something that affects the whole world, you know.
Secret Invasion was on the same level as like Civil War. I mean, it spanned half a year in comics. It spanned across a bunch of comics. So like, if they don't handle this with the care that they even tried to do with Civil War, even in that, you know, that 2 hours or so, I'm gonna be scared, man. I don't want you to call something an arc that I know in a comic. Just make something up. Call it the Alien Wars or something like that. Don't call it something.
Well, it's like this threatens our entire world. Let's send Nick Fury and a couple of Skrulls up against it. You know, it's got to be. You're right, man. It's got to be sort of a movie level event. They've even said, though, I think Kevin Feige even addressed that. Didn't he in some interview say this show sounds like it should be a movie, but we have plans of why making it a show is better. It's true. It might be that the next 2-3 seasons they make, my dogs are going crazy right now. It might be that the next 2 or 3 seasons they make feel more confident. I mean, honestly, WandaVision was kind of an experiment, and so the tone of it being different didn't feel like it was, you know, it's almost like they're doing that Marvel thing they've always done of like testing things in a way that they can. Falcon and Winter Soldier also feels like a TV-sized idea. You can get across some of this type of storytelling in this format. So maybe they will become more ambitious and more confident as they go on, but I think we will never be able to shake that feeling that Marvel's somewhere beneath it all. They're just getting you excited about the next thing. I think that is like, totally. And it's like, that's part of it, but that is the reason why we're all compelled to say things like soap opera and all that, as opposed to necessarily, even those of us that love it, like sitting back and going, that was great. That's one of the best shows I've ever seen. That's one of the best movies I've ever seen. Even if you're thinking that when you're watching it, by the time you get to the end, you're going, ooh, what's next? Oh, I want to see I can't wait to see this character now face off with this character. So,
So let's get into our last news item, because it'll jump into the finale. It is basically announced that like the day, I guess, the finale aired for the season of Falcon and Winter Soldier, they announced that they are developing a Captain America 4, and that's going to be written or co-written by Marcus Spellman, who did the show running for Falcon and Winter Soldier. Malcolm Spellman, sorry. And who else is co-writing it with him? Do you have the name handy?
I did not see that name. The news I saw was just him. So
yeah, it's another. I think the guy also worked on Falcon and Winter Soldier, but it's, obvious, perfectly timed to the
Yeah.
finale.
Right.
And I mean, it's something they've been sitting on and it's been rumored for a while. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer, especially because it is such a, it does seem like a marquee character now, especially since we have a, spoiler alert, new Captain America.
Yeah.
Just super exciting. And yeah, I don't know. I don't really know what else to say. I mean, like, it just seems like inevitable, that they would do this and that they should do this. And there's no reason, like, when you're continuing with more Thor movies and, you have some way to continue these iconic characters, like you're talking, Ronald, like, there's no reason now that this iconic Captain America is not going to pop in and out of all these Marvel series that come up on Disney Plus in the future, So
Right.
keep this character going in this way and the way that we have him now. And I mean, I think people are really happy with Falcon and Winter Soldier overall. It seems very positive from everything I've seen. I mean, I thought it was, I'm a big fan of it. And I don't know. Yeah, this is great news and very exciting news.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I mean, it fits in perfectly with, like, you can understand why they couldn't have announced this a day earlier.
Right, right.
And also, it was announced at exactly the moment when we were probably about to start this conversation saying, what's next? Are they going to do a movie with this version of Captain America? Are they going to do a second season of this show? I mean, I would be fine with a second season of this show, but kind of to your point, Ronald, about the movie versus the TV feel, you kind of do want to see these characters jump back onto the big screen so they don't feel like TV characters. And I don't know, as good as television has been, it's strange that there's still a little mental divide. But yeah, you kind of want to see it on a 50-foot screen, and you want to see it like with that crowd reaction and everything. So how do we feel about, okay, Captain America 4 is coming out. The new linchpin of what could be happening with Marvel's heroes is Anthony Mackie in the, in some version of the costume that we saw in the last episode of this show. Let's just talk about our new Cap. How do you guys feel about, I guess, both in world in terms of story, but also just in terms of the actor and how this might manifest in the movies? How do you feel about not just Sam Wilson as Cap, but Anthony Mackie?
I like Sam Wilson's character. I like Cap. I had a ton of problems with this last episode, but they're like, we could talk about it. It's heavy, man. Like, okay, so one thing I'll say real quick is I'm a Black man, and so my perception of these things is very different. Like, I'm very acutely aware of execution of ideas when it comes to Black people in movies. While, some people may watch it and not think very much of it, I think the way that they handled John Walker killing that man in public and then giving a second chance an episode later sends some weird messaging about the way that policing in America is handled. That's one.
It was very bizarre. It was very bizarre. We've got to talk about that. I want you to keep going, but I definitely want to come back to that point because that was like a major stumble of this last episode to me. But keep going.
Okay, I can, because it's not about the whole episode, because these are just specific things, right? So there's a term that was used in throughout the season that's often used by African Americans when talking to white people. Do the work. Do the work is a double entendre, right? It's like do the work to become a better person because of all the trauma you've experienced, but also do the work to understand my struggle as a person, right?
Don't make you do the work. I think that's what I keep hearing. It's like, as an ally, don't be like just asking your Black friends, like, look for what to do. Don't wait for them to tell you. And I feel like they illustrated that with Bucky and Sam in a way by having Bucky own up to that, and they showed like good allyship in that moment.
Imagine an idea that this idea was pitched to a man who's supposed to be an ally, right? Do the work, figure it out yourself. I don't have to be this person for you. And then at the end, a man sitting in front of his oppressors telling them why not to oppress people. In a monologue that was very weird and off color and weird, and man, you should like us, you should like my immigrants because they're I have a real problem with having to convince people to not treat you poorly. I have a problem with that. It's culturally insensitive for you to put a Black man in a space where he has to explain to white people why not to treat other people poorly. It's just that doesn't work for me. It's never worked. It's never been a thing to have to explain. Like, why should I have to tell you why immigrants need to be treated well? Sure, I mean, you can figure it out, but like, why is that his job? Why is it done the way that it's done? Why is he using the language that he's using? And sometimes you realize that, okay, it's a Disney thing, but it also is from a different gaze than I'm accustomed to. And I understand that he's trying to become like he's an American hero. And that takes a level of trying to shape things for people. But I don't ever want to see my cat explaining to white people why not to treat people poorly. I never want to see that in my life. It's just super off. It didn't work for me. No amount of explanation can help me understand why somebody would have to explain that to someone.
Right. It's an interesting note too, because it also feels like in a plot moment, it feels very like I was not convinced. Like I was more convinced by him showing up and just fighting in that costume and just being Captain America than I was in that speech. I think if it had been a scene between him and the senator where he's talking to him about get your shit straight or something like that, it would have felt better. But the whole idea of it being to the news cameras and the whole world watching,
that seems a little
it's like
off.
it was pretty corny. And then I also thought that like kind of furthering what you said, like they brushed past Isaiah Bradley's like criticism of that idea, so that the next time we see him, he's kind of being like, hey man, you did the right thing. I mean, I think they could have played all those beats almost in the same way, but I think what you're saying, Ronald, like take a little bit of that sanctimonious, like we're doing something big here out of it, because it did feel, I agree, at that moment did feel strange. I just thought it kind of went on too long and was kind of a corny moment, but I think I was being bumped by some of the stuff you're saying too, which is that this feels like this lesson is for racists or something like that. Like this is not
true.
Like suddenly this show is a lesson for racists and not a show about like characters that we're already bought into and whose humanity we already buy into, because I feel like that was the moment when that's also, and this is going to sound like a weird sidebar, that's also the moment when you have the most chance to look at the cowl that he's wearing and how it looks funny on his head with the sort of Oakley wrap. It's like that was the time where it reminds me of on in the Christopher Nolan Batman movies, you know, I don't mind Batman in his costume going, get over here, stop, go. But when he's like, the nature of justice is that it must always, like whenever he says that, and I kind of feel like seeing him stand there in that costume, giving that speech, it started to feel very tonally off and silly to me.
Didn't understand it. It's so I think that there has to be a clash of ideas. Like there has to be like Malcolm Spellman maybe is like, look, I want to make this balanced. I want to make this. And he got a note that was like, cool. But if at the end, he has to say this.
He has to explain it to white people at the end.
He has to explain it to white people. And that is not our job. That is no minority's job in the world to ever have to explain why you've oppressed people.
Your humanity. Yeah.
Why, how are you recognizing the humanity in other people? Do the work. Like he said to the other man who actually did the work. That was very earned. By the way, Bucky's
story was great.
It's damn near flawless.
However, okay, well let's do this. Let's I want to keep going on. Let's finish up with Sam, and then let's hit John Walker and let's hit Bucky. I don't think we're done with this part, because I do think it's kind of odd. I mean, at the end of the show though, when that title came up, and this is our new Cap, I like that. I even liked the sort of, even though it's a cliche to be like, oh, look, Bucky's invited to the cookout. I sort of thought that last moment, the scene that was like, here's Sam's life, even though they did that thing of like shooting, you've got like 10 people, but you're shooting them up close to make it look like it's a big crowd. But like, I liked seeing the sort of family vibe at the end that Bucky and Sam are now friends. It's almost like this show ended with the beats that we thought it was going to start with. Sam is now Captain America. Bucky and Sam are partners. You know, it feels like that's where we were at the end. So I liked the sort of heartwarming quality of that. But I do think that like the stuff with Sam felt like Sam and John Walker both somehow between episode 5 and this episode, some shit went down that just doesn't, I mean, I don't necessarily want a whole nother episode in there, but I think that what the issues we're talking about, there needed to be some, like it would have been better to see everything you just criticized, Ronald, play out internally for Sam, or in a private conversation for Sam, or talking to his sister. I think they gave us that with her saying, do what you want to do, don't do what anyone tells you to do. But it still doesn't feel like, if we take the political message of Isaiah Bradley saying no self-respecting black man would pick up that shield, the leap between that and him saying suit looks good on you or whatever is just like,
like
they didn't get us there. They didn't get us there. They did a great job of getting us to the first place, and they didn't at all to get us to the second place, you know?
Yeah.
That's the concern, like coming out of, I don't know if it was episode 4, we talked about this. It was like, there was too many ideas up in the air, you know, where you get to a point that you do have to land them all or try to land them all. And I mean, I think at the end of the, I mean, I'm still coming out of the show on the whole as a positive. Like
I am
I
too.
enjoyed the show.
Absolutely.
I do think that for all the good moments, like in this episode, it did feel very weird to me, like beyond what you're describing, Ronald, because that, I mean, you obviously, like, that's a very valid point, and like that's a very personal thing, and I completely understand what you're saying. I just like, it feels like everything just got like bottlenecked, and like and certain things had to get through it, and like the only way they got them through it is by doing like these extended explanation scenes and just having John Walker show up and do his thing. And like, you're right, John, like an episode between the two may have served a better purpose, like to kind of maybe air that out a little bit. But I think it's more important that like in episode 3 or 4, that maybe some of these things should not have even been introduced, or you cut it off and really air out the rest of the, you know, the next 2 or 3 episodes, like with the things that you really planted in the first 2 or 3, because some of those were the more interesting concepts and the more interesting themes of the show. Excuse me, because even something like Carly, I feel like the whole Carly and the Flag Smasher stuff, like that all was like completely washed for me.
Yeah.
Like that was the least interesting stuff of the show in the end, which is a problem, because those are the ones that really kind of like set the whole thing in motion. And like their intent, while misaligned, is really like the question of why the Falcon and the Winter Soldier like have to get together in the first place, you know? And it's almost for naught, because I feel like something just felt off in the last episode. While I liked it, something just felt off, like the writing, the character story, the beats, the narrative, whatever it was. Like I don't know if it's because of COVID, like things got changed and like things had to get cut. Like specifically the Flag Smasher stuff, it seems like there was a lot more to like what they were doing, especially like in what their plan was with taking these people hostage and just basically driving them around in an armored car or something. You know, it was just like a weird, it was a weird motive for doing what they were doing on this national stage or international stage. It was just like a weird, I don't know, like when you posted that poll a few weeks back, and I was like, meh on me for where I was at that point in the season. That was my big concern, because like a lot of the heady and heavy things that you're talked about, that you have issue with now, and I agree with you. It's like 3 episodes back, we were talking about how well they were handling that stuff, you know, and how subtle it was, but still very in front of the story. Yeah, and like in this episode, it felt like it wasn't subtle at all. And it was like behind everything. Like it wasn't like it was as important. You know what I mean? Like it was like completely just gloss and like sugar or sugar coating. Like it didn't feel as layered as it was like in episode 3 when you first, or whatever it was, when we first meet Isaiah. Like that stuff was so well handled, and this just felt like maybe rushed. I don't know. Like it just felt like notes, like you're saying. I don't know, but it just felt out of line with what the first half of the season felt like.
Okay, is this not maybe a thing that they've done before and we've enjoyed it, and they do it? And again, I don't think this is ever going to fix itself, because they are setting up the next thing. Right. But like they do a good job of getting you wondering things and setting things up. But I think that like there's only so much you can do in one story with a hero versus villain framework. I mean, I think that in some ways, and I'm not saying that in this conversation we're doing this, but I think we are part of this general tide of like, we expect a lot from these things. We expect them to be like, you know, a lot of the stuff that might bump us, maybe someone who's 10 to 13 or whatever, who's watching this stuff, is having their eye open to some ideas. Maybe maybe there is some utilitarian purpose to the stuff that feels to us a little ham-fisted or whatever. So maybe we are a little bit expecting too much. I don't think we are, though. I think when you talk about how well they did it in the middle of the season, it's because they were being subtle. And I think that in the end, like that speechifying that you're talking about, Ronald, that just doesn't ring true. And the way that some of these character arcs, it's like they did too good a job of setting up some of the complications. And then in the end, they wanted to uncomplicate it. I mean, exactly. And I feel like they didn't know when they were filming that when we rolled into episode 6, we were going to be more afraid of what John Walker would do than we would be of what Carly and the Flag Smashers would do. I don't think they knew that. I think they thought that by the end of episode 5, John Walker was dealt with and that he was now just a guy. I think the last time we saw him, though, well, aside from angrily making the shield, was lying to Lamar's parents.
Right.
I think if he had told the truth to them and had an emotional moment with them instead of lying, we would have come into this episode knowing like, oh, we don't know what he's going to do. And then when he showed up and had the choice, it could have felt that too, that moment. Honestly, I feel like that needed like a half a scene, not a beat. And the beat they gave it was, do I go after Carly or do I go after this thing? I'll try this. But he literally like shook his head like he was shaking off a headache or something. And it was like that moment. We've spent 5 episodes learning to be afraid of this guy and learning to see this guy, as you said, Ronald, as sort of like maybe the well-meaning cop, but also just the bad cop, but like a guy who doesn't understand his sense of entitlement. I can buy that John Walker would, because when we saw him in his earliest form, that he wanted to be a hero. I could buy, and from the comics, he's not a bad guy. He's an anti-hero. He's a complicated character. He's not an evil character. I think that they just did too good a job of setting it up, just like the subtlety of Isaiah Bradley and the conversation. I think all that stuff, they did such a good job because Marvel excels at character and excels at these setup moments and stuff. They did too good a job. They didn't realize we were going to be in this episode going, what the fuck is John Walker going to do? Because we've already sort of decided that the Flag Smashers are well-meaning but flawed. So whatever happens to them is going to feel like an injustice in a way, one way or the other. They're going to succeed. That's bad. They're going to all die. That's bad. So John Walker, I don't think we needed the battle between the two Captain Americas, but it really felt like that's where this show was going more than what we got. But I also think that the twist of John Walker showing up and actually being there to try to be heroic, I think they could have gotten way more juice out of it than they did, even if that's the way they were going to go, even if they were going to go for the surprise of him being heroic. They didn't play it. It's just like he shows up, he fights Carly. He seems to sincerely be mad about Lamar's death. So that had some potency to it. But we're still picturing the moment when he beheaded the guy, they didn't do anything to erase that moment. And I think that similar to Isaiah Bradley's speech with Sam, when he said the thing about no self-respecting black man, they never did anything to make us reconsider what he said and the potency of what he said in that moment. So I just feel like in some ways they overcomplicated it. If this is what they were going to do, because then the last episode tried to kind of uncomplicate things. I mean, right down to, like I said, John Walker kind of like quipping with Bucky just felt like these guys are not there yet. I don't doubt that one day.
Yeah, how are they friends? How is he quoting? How are they joking about it?
It's like Lincoln they didn't. Do you understand what I'm saying about? It's like when they were filming, they didn't realize how well they were going to make us afraid of John Walker, of what he might do.
Totally right.
And
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
But this is weird because this was filmed after the George Floyd stuff happened. Now, more than any time in the world, a white guy with a sense of like corrupted power is the scariest thing to everybody now. Not even just like, you see more stuff like this on film. It informs what happens in the world. And I guess maybe because we know that, because the people that are informed know that this may have been one of those things that they weren't anticipating. Like, to me, my heart raced every time John Walker was on.
That's what I'm saying. I really don't think they understood that they were having as much of an effect on us as they were, which is crazy. It's crazy to say that.
I was just like, okay, these are terrorists that are depicted constantly. A dude with a sense of corrupted power, a sense of empowerment that is in the wrong direction, is something that we don't see quite as often. I don't see a lot of John Walkers on screen. Like it to them, to people.
Besides
it's
the podcast that we do.
By the way, Ronald, you're so right. Whenever I talk about John Walker with my name under my face in the little, it makes me seem like a complete madman.
Nuts. The psycho John Walker. You just like, it feels like you just like,
John Walker means well, but
he's a good dude. I'm telling you, he's a good dude.
No, but I mean, I don't think they know that there's even a more interesting show if they own up to those things. Like, they could have ended the show. They could have had exactly plot-wise happened what happened, but they could have handled the character stuff better.
Or just in the middle of the season, have it switch from the Flag Smashers being the concern to him being the concern.
Yeah,
that's it. That's the answer. That's it. That's it, right? I mean,
because let's face it,
the way scarier than them. He's way scarier.
They already didn't register, right? Like, the Flag Smashers were really not there. And like, Zemo was more intriguing. The one moment of Zemo we got in this episode was cooler and scarier than anything the Flag Smashers did in this episode.
Yeah, totally true.
Yeah,
absolutely.
What the hell, man? It is a strange, that's why we have to, we do, but we give you got to give Art credit, man. The idea of starting off with a script and it can morph into something. You may have an idea for a scene. You see it. Like I think reading about U.S. Agent in the past and seeing him, I was like, okay, he's a corrupt piece of shit. But having it happen in relation to everything going on, I mean, obviously has always gone on, but having it happen on the scale that it's been going on informs the script, informs what we're watching. And then when you're looking at John Walker, like, man, I'm petrified of him. It felt like a horror film.
Hey there. Hey there.
Hello.
Hey Sid, how's it going? Thanks for letting us borrow your dad.
She's just checking in.
Yeah, she's got to make sure. She's like, Dad, you're getting too into this comic book shit.
It's like, your voice got a little loud, Dad. I'm gonna check on you real quick.
Are you yelling at your friend John Walker again? No, no, I think it's just interesting. But I mean, I feel like that shows Malcolm Spellman. Again, I think I keep coming back around to this idea that like Marvel is going to have a certain formula in place. I think Malcolm Spellman has the ability to pump into this show all kinds of cool shit. And I think the producers at Marvel they like the idea of doing something progressive or something that hits buttons, you know?
Totally
and I
agree.
think that like once it comes down to, but then we've got to wrap up the season, we got to wrap up this movie, we got to whatever, it just changes. So it's like for episodes 1 through 5, you can have your fun. But in the last one, we've got to bring it back down to John Walker is a character that we're setting up as U.S. agent. So he can't be a raving madman. We need to see Anthony Mackie embrace being Captain America and say some patriotic shit. Isaiah Bradley can't be criticized. You know, it's like it has to all be put back into too neat of a place to make us feel like, even if the next time we see these characters, it's not as settled as it seems at the end of this movie, which would be my bet that the next time we see John Walker, he's compromised. There's something kind of, I know that he's a brutal character that's scary, but there's also something kind of comic about Wyatt Russell being this sort of duped guy at this point who comes out in the costume and is like, yeah, like I think we're going to see him as, I think that they've got him in a good place to be whatever he could be going forward. I don't think they can sell him as a, like, oh, he's the well-meaning guy who made that mistake that time. I just don't think they can do it. I don't think he works that way. I think he can be doing the right thing for the wrong reasons, or he can try to do the right thing and fuck up at it or whatever. But I don't think he's in a place where they've redeemed him. And if they think they have, it's like, I don't think that's one thing I've seen. I don't think anybody has responded particularly well to that part, even if the idea of him showing up and like turning out to have some good in him, it does have some juice. It could have worked, but I don't feel like he took his lumps nearly as much as the show seemed to think that he had, you know?
I think one more thing.
Go ahead, Ronald. Go ahead. No.
The Isaiah Bradley thing that we were talking about too.
Yeah.
That to me is not what a person, I'm saying a human being on earth would accept as just a statue, just an homage in that way in a museum isn't going to make you erase all the things. So at the end, if you would have showed him this thing and he would have been like, you know, this is cool.
But why wasn't I invited to the unveiling? Why didn't you tell me about this before now? That's what I thought.
It was like, still, no self-respecting black man would do that.
Yeah,
I know what you're saying, but I still felt the same way. And then season 2, if you know, he watches him move around, and then he's like, okay, I get this now. How are you convinced there a statue in the Smithsonian that's it? That doesn't make any sense.
Like the guy who said that line that we keep quoting,
he cried when he said that.
But he would not give a shit about a statue. I mean, wouldn't it have been cool if he'd used his super strength to just like punch the head off the statue or something,
or like crack his name or something?
Yeah,
like,
right.
Crack the plate.
Honestly, that would have been cool as shit if he had done that. And if he'd done that, if he'd done that and walked away, then it would have been Sam standing there in the same place that Rhodey was at the beginning of the season, saying like, "Come on, man, you know, join up." I think it would be fine if they proceed with this idea that Sam is conflicted about being Captain America, but it's almost like they put all that to bed with his speech. And I think that's another reason why the kind of corniness of it feels like a misstep. It's like that whole idea of catching the speech in front of all the cameras and everybody being moved by it. That's like a movie cliche that has always bugged me. But so yeah,
that's
go ahead.
I was gonna say that's probably one of the biggest mistakes, like beyond the John Walker of it all, because I mean that's obviously a miss for sure.
Yes.
But the whole the conflict that Sam faces, like, you know, and the Isaiah Bradley of it all, I think that's probably the biggest mistake, is to not let that still linger, to like to have closure in that, or to at least seem like there's closure for it. I think is probably a cheat. And I think that would have been something that if Sam carried that out of this series into whatever movie, and, like that was an existing thing, like that would have had a better impact, I think, especially considering that, like, the like a 3-episode arc was the weight of that decision. And, it does feel completely just glossed over in this episode, where I feel like if he made his decision and he's comfortable with what he said, even criticizing the speech or, any of the other stuff, like if he decided what he wanted to do, I feel like not validating that in this episode would have been a better thing for the character going out of this series, because going into Captain America 4, he could still be carrying that, and I think that would have been a very important thing for his character to still carry, because I can't imagine that would be something that any person, especially a black man in America, would have come to terms with in a matter of like a day.
Well, I mean,
you tell me.
We see his nephew
Ronald,
touch the shield.
Yeah.
His nephew touches the shield, and Wakanda sends him a suit.
Yeah.
Was that enough that they didn't?
Right.
I would have felt like, so even this, if he got there and Sam shows it to him and he's like, he gets emotional and he's like, this is a start.
Yeah.
But, okay, this is nice, but you got a lot of work to do.
Well, I mean, or if he'd said, you want to feel good about this, don't you? And like walked away or something like that. Like, I think you're right. Leaving it hanging would have been.
Yeah, just having some of that attitude, or, that confidence that he had, like, like you just said, like, I hope this makes you feel better. And then walk out of the scene. Like something like that would have really bothered Sam. And I think that would have continued to make him question, himself, and, like really. And I think that challenges the character of Captain America too, to be like, who is Captain America? If it's not a person who just decided to take on the shield and the costume and who now just feels good about it. Like, that should be something that he carries. And maybe he will. I mean, maybe that'll be something they address. I don't know. Or still comes up in the film when it comes out. But I don't know. Yeah, it's a weird thing, because like when I watched the show, I came out of it, and I mean, me personally, I was like, okay, I liked it. It was fine. It was,
I dug it too.
I dug it.
I felt good.
I was
good.
happy to see Sam. It had its moments, like when he gets that bus or that thing that's falling down, and like no one else can stop it. The one person that is him, and it's like the importance of that is really heavy. And like I like that scene a lot. And like I had that hero moment. I got a little bit of cold chills, and I was like, that's the Marvel shit I live for. And it's like, that was standing. Something just felt weird about the episode. It does feel like there are so many jumps in the story with everything that we've discussed. And especially now that we're recording this, a couple of days after it aired, it sat with me a little more. And the John Walker and the Carly and his Flag Smashers, and even the speech that you talked about in front of the cameras, like it does sit a little more with you. And you do have an opportunity to pick it apart a lot more when you get removed from like just the, like the hoorah of the hero movie, or the hero moments of the episode. And you're like, man, how amazing would this season have been if they had done more work between these episodes? And it would have been pretty special, I think. But I mean, in the end, I think it was a solid show. I think Marvel is still 2 for 2 in terms of these shows on Disney Plus for me. I hope they continue to push and, explore ways to make them, even better as they go along, just like the movies. I hope the same happens for, but just some weird, and your dogs agree. Yeah, that's
yeah.
Go ahead, Ronald.
Yeah, like it's funny. Disney should take its own advice. Do the work. If you're gonna take on something like this, it's right. Like it. So oftentimes, my friends, who are allies, sometimes ask of me the task of trying to make it clear of how I feel on a day-to-day basis in this world, right? And some of it is like, I can't give it to you in an episode. I can't give it to you in a conversation.
Yeah.
And doing the work, fleshing out these very complex ideas, is what will win. I'm telling you, if they try hard, this could a misstep in this sort of thing. And I'm thinking about even as we get close to Shang-Chi, a misstep of not considering how this feels for people who aren't you can be really fucking great. Like it can mess up your money. It can mess up a whole like in a phase of the Marvel stuff. So like
if it doesn't if it doesn't land,
yes,
its impact on the phase could just fail. Right.
Yeah,
if it
you're
feels
right.
inconsiderate, if it feels racist, if it feels inconsiderate, if it feels like racially insensitive. And this is the thing. You got to do the work if you want to.
It won't matter how good you set it up, you know, if you don't land it.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's good. It's true.
So that's my fear and all this stuff. Like I know how people like love this whole momentum. If you start putting minorities into their stories and you start doing this kind of shit for the rest of the movies, people are going to start noticing, man. Think pieces are going to start coming out, you know? People are going to start standing up for it. So I think this is a weird landing, but I'm glad that it happened to see the representation that exists on all levels, on all fronts. Allies. This is the first time I've ever seen an ally on the show that's really trying to work.
Trying to understand it.
Bucky.
Bucky. Yeah.
Bucky, man. Bucky was an incredible story arc, man. Like,
loved it.
It's possible for you to do things like this in a way that feels tasteful. So I'm ready. But do the work, Disney. Do the work, Marvel. That's all. That's all I ask.
Well, but I think you could be the last word on that, because I think you said that beautifully, Ronald. And I do think that like it's important to remember that it's not just about representation. It's not just about getting people interested because you've thrown certain actors into certain roles. Yeah. You actually have to like keep that rolling, and you have to be smart about it. You can't like, people aren't stupid. They're not going to keep going to see something just because you've cast somebody, you know, that looks like them. They want it to be like the experience that's reflected, the reality of it. And I do think Malcolm Spellman obviously was able to bring a lot to this show, but I really do think that until they get off of that, like everything's got to end up happy. Everything's got to end up sort of tied up. It's always going to feel like they're kind of faking towards these big themes and never quite cinching them, because in the end they're really trying to say, we like all these characters, right? Let's all just end with everybody hugging, you know, as much as possible. But we did talk about Bucky's arc, and I do think that like that scene of Sebastian Stan looking in the restaurant at the end and deciding to keep walking, he's never looked prettier than he did in that shot.
He's gorgeous.
My wife and I were
I said the same thing to Aaron. I said the same thing to Aaron. I was like, he is gorgeous.
But regret makes him so beautiful. You know, he's got the saddest, most passionate eyes. There's a part of me, I think the messiness of that is actually sort of an indicator of where they could have left things with Isaiah Bradley, really, because Bucky did not have things put back together nicely with his friend. Bucky is like shut out of that life right now. Because he's giving this person he loves and cares about space to deal with what he told them. I think that, you know, and like him crossing off the last name, leaving the book with the therapist, all that stuff feels like, again, it's where we thought we might be at the beginning of this show. At the end of this show, Bucky has seemingly put the Winter Soldier behind him. Like, they may continue to play around with that, but I almost feel like narratively they've said, we've done it. We've showed him, put it behind him. It's kind of like Sam being Captain America, you know? It's like, it's just where the show is leaving us. I really like where Bucky is now. I hope we get more of Sebastian Stan in this role. I even want to see more of his friend. Like, I want to see how things turn around for him once he tells the truth, because to me, the tragedy of telling that guy what happened, in a way, I'm glad we didn't see it, but in a way, I think they just spared us one of what would be the most emotionally difficult scene from this show, maybe, or one of the most. But I don't know. I had two minds about it. What did you think? Did you think it was really ultimately the only thing he could do was to tell him, or do you think ultimately being a good friend to this man is? I mean, I don't know. You know, how do you feel about that idea of coming clean, even if it can destroy somebody who might be of only a few years left, or you might be more useful to them as a friend? I don't know. Honesty is important, but do you understand what I'm saying? Like, it feels like an almost selfish thing to do sometimes, is to tell someone the thing that's going to destroy them.
I've had therapy about this sort of thing.
It's tough.
And one of the things that they say is like, one of the questions that was always asked when I have this sort of feeling is like, is this for you, or is it for the other person? And it obviously was for Bucky. And shaking up that dynamic is, you know, he was lying, you know, but would I want to ruin the rest of this man's days? I don't know, man. I that's rough. Maybe I just kind of disappear. What would you do, Steve?
I don't know. It's tough. I kind of feel like
I'm glad he did it though.
It's doing the work, right?
I kind of feel like I kind of feel like honesty is probably where I would land. I mean,
Yeah.
I do worry, you know, like, but I also feel like what they made it seem about him is that like he doesn't really know what happened to his son. You know, there's like a big uncertainty about why, or you know, like
Yeah.
that's also like
that he could still be out there even or whatever.
Right, exactly. Like that there's like the question mark is also something that could like eat away at him until his last breath. Like where at least if he has like even how tragedy or how tragic and violent it is, like having any sort of closure, I don't know, could allow him to. I mean, he looked like he was having an okay time at that bar.
Right. Right. He did seem kind of chipper, you know.
He was like, ha ha. He was like laughing. I don't know. In general, I feel like you know, the character, they did make a little notion that like he didn't really know what happened or if he was even like aware he was, but like,
and that he was obsessed with it. They did.
Right.
He
was like obsessing over it. So I mean, I feel like Bucky kind of doing it for himself for sure, but also it's like providing that closure, that honesty maybe gives that older man like the opportunity to at least know and maybe come to terms with that and, you know, live what he has left of his life without wondering every day what happened to his son. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. I thought it worked really well. Like
I
Bucky stuff. All the Bucky stuff was, I think, some of the best handled stuff on the show, to be honest. And I too love him in that role. I like all the action scenes when he gets involved in them is pretty, I think, rousing to me. Like I really like him in the fight sequences. I love seeing like his arm light up, you know, when he's trying to pull that door off of the armored truck. And I think what they did with the Winter Soldier, with the, you know, Bucky Barnes character through the whole MCU period, I think there's a lot left there too. Like, some of the coolest stuff, you know, you're seeing like what he did in Wakanda. Like we don't know any of that still for the most part. Like that's some interesting shit. Like I would love to see more of that. Or more about it at least. Like I don't need to know everything, but it would be cool to learn more about what he did there or what they did with him there. But I don't know. Yeah, Bucky stuff was great, I think.
Yeah. And they've kind of dealt with the legacy of Steve now too. It's like they can mention him or not, but like this idea that he was perfect, well, he wasn't. But this idea that we have to tear him down, well, we don't. You know what I mean? It's almost like he keeps going. That there was like when they were going to the museum at the end, there was like a shot of him, you know, of Steve that they walked past, and I was like, oh, it's interesting how that shot just looks different now than it did a couple episodes ago, because they've talked about things he missed or things he was wrong about or things like you've said, Ronald, like as good of a friend as he was to Sam, he went away not understanding maybe what he was doing by offering that shield to Sam, you know. So I do think that pointing out that he wasn't perfect is another thing this show kind of achieved in its 6 episodes in a way that doesn't tear him down. But one of his mistakes is obviously Sharon Carter. He did not take care of her, and her being on the fringes is what led to her being in her present morally compromised state. I suppose before we wrap up, we really do have to talk about one of the reveals or whatever we want to call that, the mustache twirling power broker who does that thing where it's like you're walking out and you're already on the phone saying like obviously evil shit. I don't know. Do you guys buy that? Did that satisfy anything for you? I mean, I'm fine with seeing her around more, maybe for more stuff, but to me that felt like a very weird, I'm trying to track her character's mentality and her arc, and I don't know if it quite rings as true to me as what we just described about Bucky's arc. It feels like a couple of plot contrivances have put her where she is. But yeah, she's the power broker. I guess that's a twist, right? Or a reveal. It kind of wasn't, but it was. What do you think of that?
Hey, Sharon Carter, get the fuck out of here. I did not like it, man. She was, you know, I did like the action scenes with her. I liked that she could hold her own. This was not interesting. I was like, all right, man, I guess.
It's like not interesting and confusing at the same time. Do you know what I mean? I don't mean like I was lost by it. I just mean it when you're trying to track what's going on with somebody's motivations at this late date in a story. It feels like they missed some emotional.
So was the villain confused when he came into the room and was like, "Oh, you're the power"?
Good point.
That was a weird scene because did he know or is he trying to be like?
But you're talking about Batroc.
Batroc, yeah.
aka the best MMA fighter of all time.
Why did she have a disguise on that she like took off in front of everybody? That didn't make
Yeah,
any
yeah,
sense
yeah.
to me either. Like, again, I just feel like
Just to show some cool tech.
you know what?
Yeah.
That part reminds me. There were a few things in this episode that reminded me of the Darcy and the truck. You know, the last episode of WandaVision
Yeah,
when they
yeah.
trap Hayward in a truck, and that's how they get rid of this kind of minor villain. Is that he's like, oh, I can't get out of this car, and then they lead him away in handcuffs. I feel like the Emily Van Camp stuff or the Sharon Carter stuff in this episode was like that. It was like just a scene here, a little shot there to make us feel like we saw how that wrapped up, but it really didn't. I just don't think it made sense, but maybe it made sense and I just don't like it. I don't know.
I think it makes pretty good sense. I just think maybe it's just not interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think that like
Yeah.
I just think like
you're right.
she kind of got left behind. You're right. Like Steve didn't help her, didn't like pull her back in, didn't like get her apart in whatever it was.
Like maybe his biggest failure in a way was
But I think that like, you know, her adapting to where she had to go to hide and like, you know, she becomes this powerful, whatever, the power broker.
Yeah,
I think it all kind of works. And like, you know, she's got the flag smashers working for her, you know, with this super serum that she's like selling on a black market and then they take it and, you know, they're basically using it as leverage for their purpose, you know, for their own little side thing. Like, I think it all checks out, but I think ultimately just to get to the point that Sharon has her part in is working her old job and now has access to basically all of the intel that she can then sell, you know, like to the black market or to these other villainous characters in, you know, whatever areas of the world they may be in. But I think that all works like logically, but I just think like, you know, in this grand scheme of like what the MCU has in terms of like implications and villains and like world shattering things, I don't know, like a little mole in, you know, a mole inside of the CIA is like the most scary thing.
right.
And the way they end it, like on her, like making that call, like I've got like weapons and whatever, like that's cool. Like, but there's like gods, you know, there's like gods and like, you know, people with hammers and stuff that shoot lightning, you know, like
maybe it will be like she's an insider and she's a mole in the sense of she's closely working with heroes that trust her. You know what I mean? Maybe that would be how she's more dangerous.
That would probably be how it works.
But I agree with you that it's like that reveal without connecting her to some larger outside force that we are super scared of. It does kind of seem like, yeah, we've got people that can go back in time and break worlds. Right. And we're worried about someone who might leak government secrets.
Exactly. But
anyway.
I mean, I think that's all. I mean, that was the intention, I think. So, but I don't know. We'll see.
Cool.
Oh,
well, that was Falcon and Winter Soldier or
Man.
Captain America and the Winter Soldier.
I was kind of half wondering if they would like erase the Winter Soldier part. Like, you know how you were saying, like we kind of dealt with it as a character.
Yeah.
Like if it would just be like Captain America and Bucky Barnes or something.
What if it said Captain? I mean, honestly, that's like, you know, they wouldn't do that, but that would be going back to the original Captain America and Bucky. You know, that would be kind of cool.
I want to update everybody. My daughter just drew this for us.
Awesome.
Oh,
Wow.
I like that.
Yes, it's the new Captain America with wings. Wow, she drew wings on it.
That's very nice.
Wow.
I thought it was John Walker because he had like blood on his face, but you know. That's very cool. She must have she knows about the new one with wings. That's cute.
Yeah, she does.
That's really cool.
She's into it. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I think that it would have been interesting if like both characters kind of had like that title card would have changed maybe to like really kind of rid him of the Winter Soldier piece.
No, you're right. I don't even think about the fact that that's an outdated, like that's almost like you wouldn't call him that. That'd be like,
right.
Please don't call me the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, like you said, like him leaving that bag and like the book with all the names. It's like that really should be gone now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
I agree.
Missed opportunities.
But yes, I want to say I agree with you, Steve. Like with all my issues with kind of like sometimes the end game or the end chapter reveals where they were going all along, and that's when you can have your issues with the execution or with things that took too long or that they rushed. But ultimately, I feel like if I take all 6 episodes of this and I kind of average them out, I really enjoyed the focus on character and the focus on getting someone from one place to another. And it's only that, those little stumbles in the back end really do hurt what they were trying to do maybe in some ways, but I ultimately it left me more interested. Like the main characters here, Sam and Bucky, I'm more interested than I was, or at least as interested as I was before. So in that sense, I think it did its job. But now I'm
Absolutely.
really interested what the plan and what the point of Captain America 4 could be, because they can proceed in that knowing how people reacted to this, and if we are going to see like US Agent as part of that world, maybe they realize, oh, this guy's actually, he represents something different than a flawed hero to viewers. He represents the sort of like you said, Ronald, the kind of entitled police state. That's a totally different thing for a character to remind us of, as far as like wanting to see them get redeemed or whatever. So I'm excited going forward, and I'm really excited about Loki coming in about a month. So ultimately a positive, but I'm glad we got to talk about some of the fact that, they still can be kind of ham-fisted with handling some of these things. We talk about it all the time with like a movie will throw in a rape scene or pedophile or something like that, and we'll say this movie brought up these issues but didn't really want to deal with it. In some ways, I keep saying they did a great job of bringing these issues up on this show, but they didn't really seem to want to deal with them very, very completely in the end. So
I'm still interested, man. I'm ready to see Cap 4. I'm ready to see Loki. Shang-Chi especially, man.
Don't forget Black Widow.
Black Widow. There's so much Marvel stuff coming at our faces. Not even that I don't want to see it. It's just like I legitimately forgot based on the schedule. I'm excited about talking to you guys about Black Widow, because this is a one that's been it's gotten the treatment, man. It's been kind of pushed and pulled, and
it almost feels like they just need to get it out of the way.
Yeah.
It really does, which is sucks for it, because it could be it looks like it actually could be like a really good movie.
Yeah.
But it does feel like in the grand scheme of things, it's like we just need to get past this movie so that it's like everything else can go on with itself,
And it might be setting up some cool shit. Like I think
it will.
There's some legacy stuff with Black Widow in that. So if in a couple of this time next year, we may be going, oh yeah, there's a new Black Widow, there's a new Captain America with She-Hulk coming. There might be kind of a new Hulk in that sense. A new Iron Man is very easy. Just get someone cool to put on that suit. I'm just saying, like, there's all kind of ways that we can end up with those legacy heroes, and we might be looking at a totally different group that represents a similar thing in a year or two. And I think that's cool, but it's also part of the comics. The reason I think it's cool is because that's what they do in the comics. Is it's constant iterations, constantly reacting to what's happening. So
cool. Taskmaster is such a cool ass villain.
He really is.
He's like Shang Tsung. Like he might fight you in your style and fight you in Hulk style. Like it's just
he trained in the comics. Lamar Hoskins, the John Walker's friend, was trained by the Taskmaster guy.
You blow my mind.
But that's why when I saw him, I was like, oh, maybe they're going to
right.
But Black Widow is a flashback, so it's possible. Anyway, I don't think they'll do that, but that would be a cool little tie-in character to bring in. Yeah. It'd be like him working for another questionable person, though.
Yeah.
Dang it.
Oh, man. All right, cool. Well, that's going to wrap it up. Like you said, John, we got Loki coming out in a month-ish plus, a little over a month. So we'll probably get back to this when that starts back up and do these recaps. And then, Black Widow in June. Is anything really else in the summer, Marvel? I don't think so, right?
No.
Yeah, so that'll get us through the summer, hopefully.
That TV show, but we could talk about that. The stop motion one on Hulu.
Oh, MODOK.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to check in on that. That definitely seems like the voice casting. Have you seen who's on it? John Hamm is Iron Man.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, that's great, like comedy casting. So
So if you want to be sure you get alerts when that starts back up. I mean, I'm sure if you're watching these shows, when Loki's starting. But if you can subscribe to this YouTube channel, hit the little bell to get the alerts, notifications when new episodes come out. Because like I said at the top of this show, we do have a podcast that comes out weekly as well, where we put videos here, or you can listen to that podcast on any podcast platform, really. But if you hit that alert, you'll get alerts for that too, and maybe you'll like the podcast too. Hopefully that's the case. But the Marvel Schmarvel show is exclusively on YouTube. So if you want to, make sure you check back with us when Loki starts up, that'd be great. If you want to check out our podcast directly, you can go to movieschmovie.com, listen to any back episodes, maybe while you're on the go, pick a podcast player that you like to use and just, give us a listen. We'd appreciate it. We talk about all things movies, TVs, entertainment, everything. we just kind of broke off the Marvel talk to this special kind of show because we do talk a lot of Marvel. So this seemed to make a lot of sense. But
They keep us on a drip, Steve. That's the problem.
What else? Anything else you guys want to mention before we kind of cut out?
No, I think that's it for me.
That's good. Yeah.
Cool, man. All right. Well, thanks for listening. And yeah, so as always,
Schmake, Schmine, Schmarvel.
Schmake, Schmine, Schmarvel. Maybe we have a month and change to come up with something better.
Yeah.
Or we just realize that that's the best possible thing. So
Yeah.
maybe that'll happen during that time.
If we say that at the end of the next episode of this, you know it's a sad day because we didn't come up with anything better.
We just doubled down on
month
that.
and a
That's
half.
it. That's it. All right, cool. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys later. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. All right, stopping the record.